This video series is brought to you by greenlifeplanet.net, glassbottleoutlet.com, and trueaquaponics.com. You can also help support this series by joining our Patreon campaign. Welcome back to a long overdue greenhouse video. At this point we're about ready to start our site work. Stakes are in for where the greenhouse is going to go, and we're just waiting for the excavator to show up, and he's scheduled us sometime in July to get things done. In a previous video I had gone over a grant application that we had been working on, and unfortunately we didn't get that, so we're basically going to be progressing on this project as we can afford to do so. I prefer to self-fund it at this point and not take out any loans or apply for any other grants, so we'll just sort of keep plugging away as we can afford to do so. Also, on the grant video I had a bunch of comments left about our grant application. Usually I don't make a whole lot of responses to comments like that, but I thought this could be justified to have a quick rant about this. I had several people write to me, a lot of them were even private emails and whatnot, saying that they didn't think I should be applying for grants because it's essentially using taxpayer dollars to help fund a private company. And actually I sort of agree with them on that, where I'm also not a big fan of using tax dollars to run companies. But this is a grant that's been established and has been set up by the state for many years, and I figured I'd try to take advantage of it. Basically, if you don't like how your tax dollars are being used, the platform to argue against that is really not on my channel, but you should bring it up with your state legislators, because they're the ones that determine where your tax dollars are being used. So I do appreciate the feedback on that, but using my channel as a sounding board for how your tax dollars are spent really isn't the place to do so. So enough of my ranting about that. Let's get on with what we've done so far. You might remember in one of my previous videos a plan that I had drawn up for the whole site. Now that we know where everything is for our soil conditions for septic system and whatnot, I had an engineer actually draw up what my ideas were and have it done on an official plan. And just for the scope of things, you can see here is the current greenhouse, and then in the future these 3 greenhouses can be put in. Don't forget, we're just going to do this initial greenhouse. So what this plan shows is the wetlands here and over here, and we just have to make sure that we're not going to regrade any of the area into the wetlands. So the plan shows how the site's leveled off, where a future septic system can go, a potential barn or fish house eventually. The well will go here, and that shows a radius here of 75 feet, and you have to make sure that the wells aren't too close to the septic system, along with a new driveway entrance that will then come along here and access over to the other greenhouse and heads up to the road that goes into the other fields. And there's also a second page to this which shows all the technical things. Here is what the profile of the septic system would look like. You have to make sure that it's not too close to groundwater. And then there's profiles of a pumping station, the infiltrators that will be used for the galleys of the septic system, and a cross profile showing all the elevations for our septic system. So most of this plan is to deal with sewage disposal and also some erosion control with dealing with some silt fence, so that way if there is a strong rain event, the soil won't get washed into the wetlands. And so that goes over how it should be seeded and all the plan of construction. So all this is needed for obtaining a wetlands permit so that we can actually build on this property without showing that we're going to disturb any of the existing wetlands that are in here. After a couple of months, we did get our wetlands permit, and this also gets filed with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and with the Windham Waterworks because we are in the watershed for a public water supply. Just to cover all of our bases, we did get a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers stating that we're outside of their jurisdiction for this project. It's always a good idea to let these agencies know what we're up to, just in case somebody does complain about the project. Over the winter, I cut down a whole bunch of trees in the area that the greenhouse is going to go, along with brush along the sides of the fields and whatnot, and there was a lot of it. Usually I just put it out in the woods and let the animals use it as shelter, but there's just so much of it, I had to burn it this year. It took quite a while to wait to get a permit to burn. It's just been so dry this winter and spring, but there was one weekend there was an opening, so I took advantage of that. And all over the property I had piles of brush, so as the main pile burned down, I used the trusty old tractor to bring in piles and keep feeding the fire. When you have this much brush, it's usually best just to create a long pile of it instead of a big round pile. That way it burns from one end to the other and helps to keep it under control. Even though I did a smaller controlled burn and let it burn from one end to the other, the grass around it did catch on fire. It was just so dry that it spread through the field. So you just sort of shovel away some of the fuel and it stops it and keeps it near the fire, or simply just step on it and it puts it out and it stops it from spreading. However, you do have to keep an eye on these things because probably 50 feet away or so, I did notice that one of my stumps that was several years old was starting to smolder, so an amber must have blown down and caught that. After a couple of hours, most of the brush is gone. It's just left with some ambers, and you just sort of knock it around with a shovel to spread it all out, and it's done by the end of the day. Now that I have all my permits and mapping all squared away, I had the engineers come back out and we marked out the location of the new greenhouse along with some elevations so when the excavator comes out they can set up everything properly. We also marked out where all the wetlands were just to be safe and make sure that we don't encroach on them while they're doing the excavation work. From this drone footage, you can see where everything is laid out. It's a little bit clearer than looking at a map sometimes. So this is where the greenhouse is going to go and the wetlands, and it's laid out nicely where we can set up more greenhouses in the future. Of course, I did manage to crash the drone during this and hit a tree. Wasn't very pleasant, broke the camera and the gimbal on the drone and cost quite a bit to get that replaced.
So that's about it for now. I appreciate you watching, and next time around we should have some pretty good exciting stuff with a little bit of earth moving and getting that site laid out. Thanks for watching.